Hello and welcome to my new and returning subscribers. I came across one of my favorite poems today, which is The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. The one which says two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I took the one less traveled. I'm going to connect the dots later. I've actually left Egypt, but I haven't reached, the promised land yet. Now, before I get into my personal experience and share my experience in the wilderness, the scriptures that I'm going to share with you today will guide you, will sustain you, and anchor your hope. Turning pain into peace. If you're in a season of crossing over, not yet standing in the promise, take time to sit, with these verses. Let them speak to you, strengthen you, and carry you forward. For those who are, familiar with the Bible story, you already know what this means. And for those who may not be familiar, the promised land represents a place or season where someone, expects to find fulfillment, peace, or joy. Our journey with God often feels like walking, a rugged mountain trail. If you remember, Israel had two major crossings. The Red Sea that pushed them into the unknown, and the Jordan that brought them into everything God promised. One began their wandering and the other ended it. Both changed them. God has been moving me out of the places I once, settled into, the spaces that felt familiar, safe, and predictable. I can feel it. I am in a transition somewhere between what was and what's coming next. Stretching me, challenging me, but it's also making me aware of how closely He's guiding this shift. I may not fully see the destination yet, but I know He's leading me step by step into something I wouldn't have stepped, into on my own. Everything, in fact, started changing for me in September. Some choices were hard, some moments, they caught me off guard, but each crossing is shaping my faith in ways I'm still slowly discovering. We are so tested, in the wilderness. Each step grows heavier, and part of me wants to slip back into what feels familiar. See the scriptures that I'm sharing, but something within keeps whispering that just beyond this stretch is a view worth reaching, a moment of clarity and fulfillment that makes every struggle meaningful. Like the Israelites, I'm finding myself complaining about my circumstances. I'm constantly comparing everything to how good the past seemed, even though God is giving me manna, His provision, His care, His guidance. My needs are being met, yet I'm struggling, to appreciate it. See some scriptures from Exodus. Jesus tells us to be alert because the enemy prowls, around like a roaring lion. 1 Peter 5 verse 8, he assures us that we will face trouble, but reminds us that he has overcome the world. John 16 verse 33, he warns us that persecution should not surprise us because he himself was persecuted. John 15 verse 20, yet despite these warnings, he calls us to take heart and follow him. Now, just to connect the dots, with the poem that I shared earlier, I'm sharing a few lines, from this lady called Sandra Flowers. You'll absolutely love this and resonate with this. She says that in so many ways we wake up each day facing that same decision. Which road, will we take? The narrower, more challenging paths are less traveled. There it goes. Chosen only by those willing to endure them, for a greater reward. And a few lines, from her poem, I fell in love with this. It says that the roads I'd wandered blind, dare I venture forth and trust. What might I come to find? The trail had its obstacles, rough with rocky terrain, no promise of ease, but of a guide who would remain. He's the way I would follow, the truth I would know. He gave his life so I could live and go where he may go, leading me down the best paths, making crooked places straight. This loving shepherd awaited just beyond the narrow gate. So, how do we live while we are still in the wilderness? The answer is right here. Before the promise, before the breakthrough, by fixing our eyes on Jesus and choosing to become more like Him. There it is. Christ likeness is the way through. Loving when it's hard, serving when it costs us, walking in humility, patience, forgiveness and faith, even when the journey feels long. We may not reach perfection here, but we can keep growing step by step into His likeness, and that is how we cross over. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this Bible share. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'm going to connect with you guys in the coming week. Thank you so much.